Anastasia, help. I've been molested at the club. The desperate and helpless sound of her best friend's voice was the only thing on Anastasia Tillman's mind as she rushed over to the clubhouse. Room 808. Anastasia looked up at the number plaque on the door of the private room. It was the same room number that her best friend, Haley Seymour, had texted her. Without another thought, she barged through the door to save her friend. When the door swung open under her hand, she was greeted by the darkness within. Suddenly, a strong hand clasped around her wrist and dragged her into the dark room, followed by a loud thud as the door slammed shut. "Hey, who are you and what do you want?" Anastasia shrieked, her eyes darting around wildly as she tried to make out her surroundings. "Settle down, and I'll treat you well." A man's deep and husky voice spoke close to her ear. The next second, Anastasia was unceremoniously tossed onto the couch, and before she could scramble to her feet, a lean and strong body pinned her down. She let out a muffled cry when a pair of lips that tasted like peppermint captured hers. The man on top of her felt burning hot to the touch. A sense of hopelessness brought tears to her eyes as she tried to struggle against the man, but in the end, she could do nothing but endure the man's ferocity. An hour later, Anastasia staggered out of the room, looking disheveled. She had only just been through a nightmare, but that didn't distract her from worrying about her best friend's safety. She was just about to call Haley's number when she saw a group of men and women walking out the side door. Under the lights, she instantly recognized the two of the women in the group. One happened to be Haley, her best friend who had cried for help on the phone earlier, and the other was Anastasia's stepsister, Erica Tillman. The two girls walked side by side with their arms linked, as if they were the closest of friends. Shock and rage colored Anastasia's features when she saw them. "Stop right there, Haley," she called out loudly over the distance as her fists clenched tightly at her sides. Upon hearing this, Haley and Erica swiveled around to face her. Anastasia glowered at them, ashen-faced as she demanded of Haley, "Why would you lie to me?" Haley smirked. "It's not my fault that you're always so gullible, Anastasia. Did you have a good time with that gigolo back there?" Erica asked in a sing-song voice, smiling wickedly. It was only then that Anastasia realized that both of them had set her up. The chastity she had held dear for the past 19 years was now sacrificed for their despicable glee. Presently, Haley's eyes were frosty as she seethed. "Did you actually think I was your friend, Anastasia? I've been living in your shadow ever since we met. I hate you, and I want nothing more than to ruin that face of yours." Erica, on the other hand, swiftly interjected by mocking, "I have the proof I need to show Dad that you've been pimping yourself for money at the club. It won't be long until you're thrown out of the house." "You too." Anastasia was so furious that she swayed. Her body was in tatters after the ordeal she had been through, and the collective weight of her friend's betrayal and her sister's cruelty nearly knocked her down. "Let's go, Haley. We don't want to be seen with trash, do we?" With her arm looped through Haley's, Erica led her toward the sports car she had parked by the curb. 3 days later, at the Tillman residence, a low male voice yelled out in rage, "You became an escort for money just because I wouldn't let you go abroad for your studies? How can I, Frances Tillman, be capable of having such a shameless daughter like you?" "Dad, I didn't." "You didn't? But you did, Anastasia. How could you go to such shameless lengths? Did we starve you, or did we deprive you of anything? I can't believe you would pimp yourself to random strangers in a filthy clubhouse. For your sake, I hope you haven't brought any disease back to this house. Who knows what my daughter and I could have caught from you?" The woman who was dressed in jewels and fine clothes sneered from where she sat on the couch. "Dad, I really didn't do it." Anastasia tried to explain herself. However, Francis did not want to hear another word from her. He glowered at her maliciously as he snapped, "Still lying to me, I see. Get out of this home right now. I will not stand to have you under my roof. No daughter of mine could be so shameless. From now on, you are not my child." Meanwhile, on the staircase landing, Erica watched this scene play out as she leaned against the banister with her chin propped on her hand. Everything was going exactly the way she had planned. In a matter of minutes, Anastasia was going to be cast out of the house and wander around like some pathetic stray mutt. Downstairs in the living room, Anastasia fell silent when she saw the thunderous and disappointed look on her father's face. She wordlessly rose from her seat and walked up the stairs to pack up her things. She had only just rounded the landing when Erica barricaded her. With her arms crossed haughtily in front of her chest, the younger girl sneered, "Get out of here. Don't linger around like an eyesore. This house will never have a place for you ever again." Anastasia clenched her fists as she glowered at Erica's pleased expression. Seeing the hatred and anger in Anastasia's eyes, Erica leaned forward. "What? Do you want to slap me or something?" She turned her cheek toward the fuming girl and said smugly, "Go right ahead then." Without holding back, Anastasia brought her hand down across Erica's face, resulting in a hard slap. Erica let out a shrill cry. "You just hit me." "Mom, Dad, Anastasia just hit me," she howled as she bolted down the stairs. Naomi Lowell quickly pulled her daughter into her arms and cried up the stairwell, "How dare you strike my daughter, Anastasia? What the hell are you playing at?" Francis glanced at the red imprints on Erica's cheek, and he had never been more disappointed in his life. When did my oldest daughter become so infuriatingly rebellious? "Dad, it hurts?" Erica sobbed as she burrowed into her father's arms, taking in exaggerated deep breaths like she was in great pain. "Get out of here, Anastasia." Francis roared up the stairs. Having packed up her things, Anastasia grabbed her passport and went down the stairs. Her heart grew stone cold when she saw how her own father was holding Erica in his arms like she was something precious. Anastasia knew then that she indeed had no place in his heart. Francis had only heard Erica's side of the story instead of asking Anastasia about the horrific incident she had endured last night. Ever since her mother had passed, she had spent her years in this home living like an outsider, for her father had brought home his mistress and his illegitimate daughter to form a new family. Anastasia's poor mother had never known about her husband's extramarital affairs, not even in her death. "I will never come back to this place ever again." Inside the house, Erica watched as Anastasia dragged her suitcase out the front door, and a wicked smile curled on her lips. "I finally got rid of that useless eyesore." 5 years later, a knock came on the front door of an apartment in Dansbury. The woman living in the apartment had been poring over her designs when she heard the knock. A little bewildered, she walked up to the door and pulled it open unhappily. When she saw the two Asian men in suits, she asked in Chinese, "Who are you looking for?" "Are you Miss Anastasia Tillman?" one of the two men asked in English. "I am." "And you are?" Anastasia pressed. "We were asked to look for you. Your mother, Amelia Chapman, saved our young master's life back in the day. The old madam whom we serve wishes to see you." She frowned at this. "Who's the old madam you serve?" "Old Madame Presgrave," the first man answered respectfully. Upon hearing this, Anastasia understood what had brought these men here. Old Madame Presgrave was the woman behind the Presgrave Group, the foremost conglomerate in the country. Years ago, Anastasia's mother had sacrificed her life to save old Madame Presgrave's oldest grandson. It gave Anastasia great pride to have been born to a police officer as capable and righteous as Amelia. "I'm sorry, but I don't intend to see her," Anastasia said decidedly. She had a feeling that the Presgraves wanted to repay Amelia's great deed, but she had no plans of accepting their gesture whatsoever. Just then, a childish and curious voice sounded from somewhere inside the apartment, asking, "Mommy? Who is it?" "No one," Anastasia replied hastily. Then, she turned to address the men at the door, "Sorry, but I'm really not in a mood for guests at the moment." With that, she closed the door. Meanwhile, back in the country, a man was seated on the couch inside the villa tucked halfway up the hill. "Have you tracked her down?" "Yes, young Master Elliot. The girl from the clubhouse 5 years ago just sold off your watch at the second-hand market." "Find her," said the man on the couch, his voice deep and authoritative. "Yes, sir." If you're loving this story, don't miss a single twist or turn. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to see the next explosive story on our channel. The room was bathed in a warm glow of the lights. The man who sat on the couch had flawless features, his handsome face the painstaking artwork of the heavens. He wore a finely tailored suit that accentuated his strong silhouette. At present, Elliot Presgrave's eyes turned icy as his grandmother's steely voice reverberated in his mind. Elliot, you must take Anastasia Tillman for a wife. I will only have her and no one else as my granddaughter-in-law in the Presgrave family. Right now, however, the only person Elliot was thinking of was the woman whom he had ravished in the dark all those years ago. That fateful night, his drink had been laced and rendered him so intoxicated that the only thing he remembered was how the woman had hopelessly sobbed while she begged for mercy under him. When all was done, he had taken off his watch and pressed it into her hand, thereafter passing out in the dimness of that room. Fast forward to 5 years later, he was still looking for her. It was just last week when he learned that she had sold off his watch at the second-hand market, but the news came too late, for his grandmother insisted that he take some other woman for a wife. Just then his phone rang once more. He picked it up and greeted brusquely, "What? Young Master Elliot, we have found the girl. Her name is Haley Seymour, and she was the one who personally sold off the watch. Send me her address, and I'll pay her a visit," Elliot ordered as an elated gleam flashed in his eyes. The mysterious girl from that night has finally been sighted. I have to find her no matter what. I need to make it up to her for the things I've done that night. Meanwhile, Haley was in the women's boutique. She had taken over the boutique a little over a year ago, but the business had been on a steady decline. Struggling to pay rent, she had tried to come up with ways to scrape together enough money to tide over. At last, she decided to try to sell the watch she had in her possession, and much to her pleasant surprise, it fetched a whopping price of $500,000. The watch hadn't been hers, to begin with. 5 years ago, the clubhouse staff had contacted her and told her that they had retrieved a watch from the private room, thereafter prompting her to collect it from their lost and found department. Upon arriving at the club and seeing that it was a designer men's watch, she claimed it as her own without even a second of hesitation. Since then, the watch had been nestling in her closet until she decided to sell it off at the second-hand market last week. Leading up to the sale, she hadn't expected that the watch would be worth much, but that was before she was offered an astonishing $500,000 for it. Haley was glowing as she stared at the amount of money she had in her account, and she thought happily to herself, "I guess I can live comfortably for a while longer." At that moment, the door to her boutique swung open, and she quickly rose to greet the customer. "Welcome to..." She trailed off then, so stunned that she abandoned the rest of her words. The man who had entered her boutique stood tall and straight. He was handsome beyond comprehension, and he carried with him an innate nobility. It took a while for Haley to snap out of her daze before she stumbled over her words to ask, Is there someone you're looking for, sir?" That was a fair question, considering she was running a women's boutique. It was impossible that a man wearing a refined handmade suit would be here to browse through dresses and the like. He looked like he stood at 6 feet 2, and there was no mistaking the domineering edge of his presence. "Haley Seymour?" Elliot asked as his narrowed eyes locked onto her. He searched her face, desperately trying to find traces of the woman from 5 years ago. "Why, yes, that's me. And you are..." She couldn't quite finish her words. Her faculty of speech was going haywire under the man's burning gaze. Having heard her reply, the man reached into his pocket and produced a men's watch before her, then asked in a deep, rumbling voice, "Has this watch been in your possession all these years?" Haley glanced at the watch and instantly felt the urge to shrink into herself. Blinking guiltily, she stammered, "Why's the watch's thing? And you were the woman from the Abyss Club 5 years ago? The one who was in room 808? Elliot pressed, eyeing the girl in front of him intently as he thought with a start. Could she really be the girl from that night? The wheels in Haley's mind began to turn furiously. Room 808 from 5 years ago. Wasn't that the room where Erica and I set Anastasia up? Why is this man asking me about that incident? Without dwelling too much on this, she answered straightforwardly, "Of course, that was me. Keep this watch from now on, and don't try to pawn it off again. I'll make it up to you for what happened that night," he said as he handed the watch to her. "I'm Elliot Presgrave. Remember my name, will you?" Haley looked up at him in shock. "Elliot Presgrave? As in, the heir to Presgrave Corporation, the leading conglomerate? Why, you're Elliot Presgrave?" she asked, so overwhelmed she might collapse. The man next to Elliot handed her a name card and interjected, "Miss Seymour, This is our young master's name card. You may look for him if you need his help in any way." She took the card with one shaky hand, and when she saw the shell-shocking name embossed onto the gold stationery, her heart nearly flew out of her chest. So the guy who slept with Anastasia 5 years ago was not the male escort we arranged for her, but this fine specimen who happens to be the heir to the Presgraves family fortune? As realization dawned upon her, Haley reached out and grabbed Elliot's arm, then forced tears to spring to her eyes as she threw a fit. "You have to take responsibility, Elliot. Do you know how hurt and traumatized I was after that night?" With that, she looked down and cried crocodile tears, sobbing miserably like she was the one who had been violated 5 years ago. There was only one thing on her mind right now: to step into Anastasia's shoes and assume the role of the victim from that fateful night. She was set on having Elliot take responsibility so that she could get more benefits out of this. Ultimately, she hoped to marry the man and become Mrs. Presgrave. "Don't worry, I promise to take responsibility," the man said solemnly, his husky voice steady and reassuring. "Miss Seymour, young Master Elliot has arranged a villa for you, and you can move in any time. He will take care of all your needs from now on." Elliot's personal assistant, Ray Osborne, pointed out helpfully. Haley's eyes lit up at once. She was so ecstatic she could pass out. "A world of riches and glamour will soon be in my hands. There are some things I have to take care of, so I'll get going," Elliot said. Then after casting Haley a brief look, he turned to leave. When the door swung shut behind him, Haley clutched the watch tightly. She was so overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events that she could cry. "I'm going to be rich. Rich." While she celebrated the windfall, she found herself hoping viciously that Anastasia had dropped dead within the last 5 years so that she wouldn't appear out of nowhere like roadkill. In the understated luxury ride, Elliot sat in the back seat with his eyes closed. Is Haley really the woman from 5 years ago? Why does she seem different? Or have 5 years changed her? The orange rays of the setting sun spilled through the car window and played over the man's chiseled features. He looked so handsome that it was hard to believe he wasn't some valuable piece of art that belonged in a museum. There was no one who could replicate such fine looks. He was the true successor to Presgrave Group. He had taken over the reins 5 years ago and launched the conglomerate to new heights, so much so that it was crowned first place among the world's leading companies. On that fateful night 5 years ago, he had experienced his first and only downfall in his lifetime. One of his rivals had spiked his drink in hopes of manipulating him into ruining his own reputation. Elliot had saved himself by darting into the private room, but just as the effect of the drug was at its peak, a random woman scurried in and relieved him of his predicament. Since then, the fact that he had just ravished and taken away a girl's innocence had been weighing on his conscience. He was sure that she had been chased up to that night, for when he woke up after the deed, he saw under the lights of the private room the traces of blood that stained the couch. As he thought about the scattered mess in the private room that followed his misdeed, he stopped doubting Haley's identity and his impression of her. "I have to take responsibility for what I've done to her." While this was happening, Anastasia was in her apartment somewhere abroad as she said on the phone, "Got it. Give me 3 days tops to return to the country and prepare for the competition. Mommy, are we going back?" A small figure wandered over to her side. He wore a blue checkered shirt and a pair of denim shorts. His features were delicately chiseled, albeit childish. He was only 4 or so, but there was unmistakable grace and elegance to his movements. Anastasia smiled and nodded. "Would you like to go back with me?" "Of course. I'll go anywhere you go, Mommy," the little guy beamed, his large eyes looking like glistening onyxes as they curved into crescent moons. Anastasia couldn't help musing over how beautiful the child was. Every time she looked at his little face, she felt a surge of comfort and gratitude, as though constantly in awe of how she had managed to birth such an adorable little one. "Well, then we best pack our things now. We're leaving for the airport tomorrow afternoon." "Okay." The little one gave one firm nod, then dashed into his room to pack his things for the trip. Anastasia heaved a sigh. She had been living abroad since her father threw her out of the house 5 years ago. It wasn't so much that she didn't want to go home as it was that she had no place in it. She didn't even tell her father after she had delivered her child while abroad, and now that she was going back to her homeland for her work and career, She had made up her mind to see the old man. He was still her father, after all. 3 days later, it was evening time at the international airport when Anastasia wheeled the baggage cart forward. Her son was seated on top of the large suitcase on the cart, and he gazed around in wonder. Everything about Anastasia's homeland seemed to pique his interest, and there was a curious gleam in his sparkly eyes. Presently, Anastasia had only just stepped out of the arrival hall when 2 men in suits walked up to her, thereafter greeting politely, "Miss Tillman, we have been sent here by old Madame Presgrave, who has prepared a ride for you just outside the entrance. If you please." She blinked at them and said very courteously, "I appreciate the Presgrave's kind gesture, but I have no need for a ride, thank you." "Miss Presgrave, the old madam truly wishes to see you," the middle-aged man said respectfully. Anastasia knew that old Madame Presgrave bore no ill will, but she really had no plans on accepting the old madam's kind favor. "Please tell old Madame Presgrave that it was my mother's duty to save others, and that there is no need to repay the deed, at least not to me." With that, she made to brush past the 2 men, pushing the cart toward the exit. One of the men took out his phone and informed dutifully, "Young Master Elliot, Miss Tillman has refused our offer to pick her up." Presently, 3 gleaming black Rolls-Royce with heavily tinted windows that deterred anyone's efforts of peeking inside were parked by the airport entrance. There was a man seated in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce in the middle of the fleet who kept his gaze on the airport doors, and he saw a young woman pushing her cart through them just as he set his phone aside. The woman wore a white blouse and plain jeans. Her hair had been gathered at her nape, revealing a delicate and pretty face. Her skin was alabaster, and her demeanor somewhat leisurely as she maneuvered the cart. Without a doubt, her presence among the crowd was a dazzling one. Just then, Elliot's gaze was caught by something, or rather, someone, the little boy who leaped off the woman's cart. He looked to be around 4 or 5 years of age, and he wore a gray sweater with joggers, his thick and soft hair flopping over his forehead. He might be young, but his features were finely chiseled, making him all the more adorable. At that moment, Anastasia crouched down and helped the little one straighten his clothes. There was no mistaking the gentle and indulgent look in her eyes. "Who's the kid? Is Anastasia married? If so, then I won't have to marry her just to fulfill Grandma's wishes." With that in mind, Elliot watched as the taxi Anastasia and her supposed child got into pulled away. Not long after that, his fleet left as well. They had barely covered any distance when his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and greeted, "Hey, Haley. Elliot, when are you coming to see me? I've missed you." Haley's coy voice whined on the other line. "I've been a little busy recently, but I'll see you as soon as I'm free," he answered, the bass in his voice prominent. "Promise?" Haley asked coquettishly. "Yes," he replied with forced patience. Meanwhile, over at Presgrave residence, a silver-haired old lady was sitting on the couch sipping her tea when she heard her subordinate's latest findings. She looked up in shock as she demanded, "What? Anastasia has a child? Is she married?" "According to our investigation, the child's father never showed up, so we're assuming that she had the child out of wedlock." "Oh, that poor dear. To become a single mother at such a young age." Harriet Presgrave, otherwise more widely known as Old Madame Presgrave, sighed. Guilt surged through her as she thought about the brave female police officer who had died after sustaining 18 fatal stabs from the ruffian who had threatened to hurt Elliot all those years ago. She was only just lamenting on this when an elegant and towering figure sauntered into the living room. It was Elliot, and he had returned from the airport. "Come here, Elliot," Harriet said as she beckoned her grandson over. Elliot promptly took the seat next to hers and began to say, "Grandma, Anastasia kept refusing our offer, so maybe I just found out that Miss Tillman is a single mother who had a child out of wedlock. You must take care of the poor mother and son, Elliot. It's your duty." Elliot gaped at the old woman speechlessly, stunned by her suggestion. He had thought that she would have given up on the matter, but as it turned out, she grew even more determined to see it through instead. "Grandma, I don't have to marry her. We could always use some other way to repay her mother's kind deeds and make it up to her," he countered calmly, hoping that his grandmother would see sense. However, the moment Harriet heard this, she shot him a frigid look and said, "No, that won't do. You must marry Anastasia and protect her and take care of her for the rest of her life. Elliot frowned. He didn't think any good could come from a loveless marriage, but he couldn't even reject his grandmother's suggestion because she was set on repaying the sacrifice Anastasia's mother had made all those years ago. You can't even imagine how many stabs Officer Amelia Chapman had sustained just to protect you. The amount of blood, the gruesome nature of the crime. Harriet's eyes were sad as she said this. Then, she looked up and cast her grandson a hard look, pointing out, taking care of her daughter is the least you could do. You won't ever be able to repay the officer's selfless deed, even if you were to take care of Anastasia for eternity. Elliot nodded quietly. Fine, then I'll take her for a wife. But there was another woman whom he could not let go of, whom he needed to compensate as well. That said, he had no plans to tell Harriet about this just yet, and he knew that even if he did tell her, it wouldn't dissuade her from forcing him to marry Anastasia. Anastasia has a kid, he said. That backfired on him because Harriet seemed delighted by the news. That's right. It's a little boy, probably around 3 or 4 years old. I can't believe some scoundrel just left them like that. Listen to me, Elliot. Don't you dare snub that child, is that understood? Elliot could hardly believe this. He stared at his grandmother, stumped as he thought, is this some kind of a buy-one-free-one deal? The Bourgeois Jewelry Atelier was an old and well-known establishment that had been acquired by Anastasia's superior. In order to grow the brand, Anastasia, being the chief designer for the Queen's Rose QR Diamond Global, had been transferred back to her homeland to work on diversifying Bourgeois. Through the arrangements made by Bourgeois, Anastasia was put up in an apartment. She went about decorating and straightening up her new abode while her son slept, and within 2 hours, the apartment was transformed into the perfect cozy nest for the mother and son duo. She was exhausted, but she did not feel like turning in for the day as she watched her son's adorable sleeping profile. Whatever had happened in this city 5 years ago still haunted her and made her stomach churn. Her best friend's betrayal, her stepsister's wickedness, and her father's ultimatum that resulted in her being exiled were like cuts that ran too deep to heal over. It was a miracle at all that she had survived the past 5 years. She had had to balance raising her son as a single mother and picking up design courses, and during the later part of the 5 years, she slowly worked her way up the ladder and became chief designer. She had toiled harder than anyone else, and the heavens must have granted her the stroke of luck she needed to get to where she was today. As of now, she had her savings, her son, and a job that allowed her freedom. She picked up her phone and stared at her father's number. There were several times when she thought about calling him, but something made her hesitate. It's been 5 years. I wonder if he's still angry with me. Then she heaved a sigh. Forget it. At the QR International Group, a mysterious acquisition team was negotiating with the owner Jack in the conference room. The latter finally signed the acquisition contract at a price of $10 billion. As of yet, no one knew that the boss of QR International Group had been replaced. The middle-aged man who walked out of the acquisition meeting room took out his phone and reported to the man at the other end, saying, "Young Master Elliot, the acquisition has been successfully completed, and you have now become the president of QR International Jewelry Group." "I got it," the man on the other end responded lightly. In order to fulfill his promise to his grandmother of pursuing Anastasia, Elliot spent $10 billion to acquire the company she was working at. Only Anastasia could refuse the wedding proposal, so in the process, he had to show his grandmother what he had done. Still, it was unknown whether he could marry Anastasia in the end. Elliot hoped that Anastasia would reject him. After all, every good marriage needed to be based on a foundation of mutual emotional interest. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to live together without any love in the relationship. At this point, Anastasia didn't know that her boss had changed. In the next few days, she found a private kindergarten for her son nearby and sent her son there so that she was free to work. The little boy was interested in the new school, so with a bag on his back, he took the teacher's hand and skipped into the classroom. "Is that your son? He's so handsome. I've never seen such a good-looking boy," a mother commented in amazement. Anastasia pursed her lips and smiled. She was naturally happy as a mother when someone praised her son's good looks. At Bourgeois, Anastasia came to work on her first day. As a designer sent by the design department, she enjoyed many perks. For example, She had a dedicated office and a capable assistant herself. Moreover, she only designed custom designs exclusively for a select few and not for the masses. This was also one of the unique selling points of QR International Group. Each customer would have a unique lifetime customization service. Anastasia's assistant was called Grace Ellis. She was a young, energetic, smart, and capable woman. "Anastasia, your coffee?" Grace brought in the coffee. "Thank you." Anastasia nodded. In less than 2 minutes, Grace knocked on the door again. "Anastasia, the manager said that the meeting will be held at 3:00 p.m. and the boss himself will be there, so be prepared." At 3:00 p.m. sharp, Anastasia sat in her seat inside the meeting room. There were many important members of bourgeois in the room, so it seemed that this was a large company meeting. While Anastasia was checking it out, she inadvertently met a pair of sharp eyes belonging to a sexy woman in her 20s. Her name tag read, Chief Designer Alice. Anastasia immediately understood. Being a designer sure is very competitive. Therefore, there were no so-called friends in this industry but only rivals in competition. Since she was transferred back from abroad, it was normal for her to be disliked by others. At this time, footsteps came from outside the door, as if there were still people coming. The door of the conference room was then pushed open, and the first person who came in was a tall man with a straight figure who was dressed in a well-cut suit. He had angular features and exuded a strong aura. After he came in, he walked over to the main chair and sat down. Without needing to say a word, his majestic aura made his powerful identity known to everyone. When everyone saw him, there was an instant silence below the stage. Why is the big boss different today? The female designers in the audience were all surprised and excited as they felt butterflies in their stomachs when they looked at the handsome man. As for Anastasia, she was also surprised. Isn't the boss of bourgeois someone in his early 50s? Why is this man so young? At this time, the vice president of the company, Larry Young, coughed lightly. Let me introduce all of you to Mr. Elliot Pressgrave. He is now the CEO and chairman of QR International Group. From now on, he will take over all the affairs of bourgeois. Everyone, please give him a warm welcome. There was a sudden collective gasp from the audience. Elliot Pressgrave? He bought QR Jewelry Group? While others were gasping in shock and confusion, Anastasia instantly raised her head and stared at the man in question, who happened to be looking at her too. Elliot had a pair of extremely deep eyes that were as sharp as an eagle's, so others did not even have the courage to look at him. However, Anastasia had the guts, and she had probably guessed why this man appeared here. Could it be that as long as I don't accept the Pressgrave family's repayment, they will continue to appear around me? Did I not make myself clear enough? Let's start the meeting. You will preside over the meeting. Elliot retracted his gaze and said to Larry beside him. The women present were so excited that their gazes shone. The content of the meeting was not important at all, as they just stared at Elliot in fascination. This man truly exuded an unparalleled superiority from head to toe, and he was also extremely wealthy. Thus, he was the man that every woman in the country dreamed of marrying. Anastasia also didn't listen to the content of the meeting because she was absent-minded. When she looked up from time to time, she found that the man was looking at her, which made her uncomfortable. Soon, all the people in the meeting discovered this. Why did Elliot only stare at Anastasia alone? Was it because she was young and beautiful? Instantly, all the women stared jealously at her. It seemed that Elliot's special treatment of her made them angry. Anastasia really wanted to shout and stop Elliot from looking at her. Nevertheless, she still endured it. She just wanted to finish the meeting and leave, and she didn't want to stay in this company anymore, but when she remembered she had just signed a 5-year contract, she was lost for words. After some time, the meeting was finally over. Anastasia was the first to rush out of the conference room. She returned to the office feeling agitated. At this moment, there was a knock on her office door. As soon as she turned around, Elliot pushed the door open and came in. Immediately, she glared at him, feeling annoyed at his presence. Is there something you need, President Pressgrave? Anastasia sat down in her chair, seeming a little impatient, and did not give him the respect one should give their boss at all. Hearing that, Elliot pulled the chair across from her desk and sat down gracefully with an air of arrogance and superiority. Then, he said coldly in a magnetic voice, "Miss Tillman, let's talk." "Are we talking about work?" Anastasia asked with raised eyebrows. "You should know that I was kidnapped when I was 5 years old. It was your mother who gave her life to save me, and I survived. For this, the Pressgrave family is forever grateful and wants to repay you. Just say the word, and I will try to satisfy your requests." Elliot looked at her calmly while expressing his thoughts. "Sure enough, he is doing this just to repay my late mother. No need. My mother saved you because it was her responsibility as an officer. You don't need to repay me, and I won't accept it." Anastasia refused firmly. "I heard that you have a son. If you want, I can raise him with you and take care of him," Elliot proposed with narrowed eyes. Anastasia suddenly raised her head to look at the man opposite her, and at this moment, a sudden thought flashed in her mind. She actually thought for a moment that her son looked like this man. Their facial features, eyes, temperament, and even their hair were similar. How weird. "I don't need someone else to raise my son for me." Anastasia refused again. "My grandma wants me to marry you, then take care of you and your children for the rest of your life. Are you willing to marry me?" Elliot said bluntly. Although he was talking about marriage, his gaze was indifferent. It was like he was simply shouldering a responsibility. Feeling suddenly amused, Anastasia fluffed her long hair and looked at the man opposite. "Take a good look at me. Do I look like the type who can never get married?" She was very beautiful. In fact, it was not an overstatement to say that she was absolutely stunning. "Miss Tillman, do you not want to marry me?" Elliot twitched the corner of his mouth and silently breathed a sigh of relief. "Although you are powerful and handsome, I don't care for you," Anastasia replied very confidently. Elliot's handsome face revealed a slightly startled expression. It seemed that he was not attractive at all to this woman. "Oh well, that is exactly the result I wanted, anyway." As he wished, they were not attracted to each other. "I hope you can visit my grandmother in person, Miss Tillman." After all, only this woman could deny his grandmother's wishes because, in his heart, he was also responsible for another woman. Anastasia pondered for a few seconds, then asked with narrowed eyes, "You really have acquired QR International Group? From now on, I'll be your boss, so don't worry. I'll take care of you." Elliot expressed that even though he couldn't marry her, he would take care of her at work. Hearing that, Anastasia blinked. "Okay, let's do that then. Goodbye, President Pressgrave." Elliot was startled again at her words. Never before had a woman disregarded him so blatantly. Thus, Elliot got up and left. After he did, Anastasia let out a small sigh. Suddenly, Grace knocked on the door and asked, "Anastasia, what are you talking about with President Pressgrave? Does he like you very much?" "Who said that?" "Everyone is saying that he has been staring at you in the conference room," Grace informed Anastasia with the current juicy gossip. When Anastasia heard that, she was annoyed. It seemed that Elliot was causing trouble for her at work. As a boss, he should be a good boss. She would just work under him, and he should not appear in front of her in the future. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, Anastasia picked up the phone and called her father. "Hello. May I know who it is?" A familiar voice came from the other end. Anastasia's nose burned as she called out to the other side. "Dad, it's me. I'm Anastasia." "Anastasia? Where have you been in the past 5 years? I couldn't find you." Francis was pleasantly surprised. Now that the father and daughter were connected, how could any hatred last? Anastasia's eyes filled with tears as she said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I have lived abroad for all these years, and now I'm back to work in the country." "Hey, as long as you're back. When will you come home?" "I'll go home in 2 days." "Okay, as long as you are healthy and safe." "It's my fault. I shouldn't have driven you out. Let's forget about the past." Anastasia comforted him. She had gone through all the hardships, and she didn't want to think about them anymore. "Okay, come back home as soon as possible." Francis sighed. Anastasia hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Actually, she still didn't want to go home yet. It was good enough as long as her father was healthy and safe. At this time, Larry knocked on the door and came over with a box in his hands. "Anastasia, I'm here to bring you something. Anastasia looked at the box he put on the table in surprise. What is this? Guess. Anastasia looked at the box with the words, Cloud Residence No. 1 written on it. It was like the name of a building. You better tell me directly. Anastasia smiled. She didn't want to guess. Cloud Residence No. 1 is a luxurious large condominium unit of 370 square meters that is worth $120 million. It is a top property unit that is lavishly renovated and decorated with luxurious decoration, and it is ready for you to stay. You deserve it. Larry finished speaking and opened the box. There were 6 keys and a door card inside. Anastasia frowned. Is this for me? Anastasia, this is a special perk from President Pressgrave. He changed your residence to the Cloud Residence No. 1 unit. Aren't you surprised and excited about it? Take it away, I don't need it. Anastasia refused coldly. She didn't want to accept any favors from the Pressgrave family at all. When her mother died, she had gone through a very painful childhood. Her mother had died an honorable death, and she had lost her closest loved one. Hearing her refusal, Larry was dumbfounded for a few seconds. Did she just refuse such an amazing perk? Anastasia, you're not joking, are you? This is a perk that is only for you. Larry was 35 years old and single. He also fell in love at first sight with Anastasia, who was young and beautiful, but he didn't expect that Elliot had already gotten ahead first. Tell President Pressgrave that I don't need special treatment in the company. After Anastasia finished speaking, she pushed the box toward Larry and repeated her words. Take it away. Don't do this to me. How am I supposed to tell him? Just accept it. Larry could see that Elliot was interested in Anastasia. However, Anastasia still said firmly, send it back. I really don't need it. Thank you. When Larry saw that she was serious, he had to take the box away. At this moment, Elliot did not go back to work in his company Dominion Corporation, but started working in the main office of Bourgeois instead. President Pressgrave, Anastasia won't accept this no matter what I said, Larry reported helplessly. Well, Elliot's dark eyes were cloudy. He had expected this, but it would be best if he could repay his debt with material things so that he would not have to bind himself to Anastasia by marriage. At the Tillman residence, Francis had just returned. He looked at his wife watching TV on the sofa, then sighed happily and said, Naomi, I received a call today. Guess who it was? Who? Naomi looked at him curiously. It was Anastasia. She had been living abroad for all these years. No wonder I had been unable to contact her, Francis said happily. He didn't realize that his wife's expression had suddenly changed, and the resentment in her eyes grew. Why are you still thinking about her? She embarrassed you in the past, so don't let her come back to this house. Naomi, I've been thinking for some time, and I feel that she's not that kind of person. There must be a misunderstanding, and anyway, it has been so many years since. Just let it pass. What misunderstanding? Erica photographed her frequenting that kind of place in the middle of the night. The evidence is solid. Naomi really didn't expect Anastasia, who had been driven out, to come back now. Did she notice our company's development and come back to compete for the family assets? It all belongs to my daughter. It will be over my dead body for Anastasia to get her hands on it. Seeing that his wife was not happy, Francis said no more and went upstairs, a little tired. Then, Naomi quickly picked up her phone and dialed her daughter's number. Hey, Erica, guess who's back? Who? That little B** T-Sage Anastasia contacted your dad today. She's back? What? How can she even come back? She must have taken a fancy to our family's assets and wants to return for a piece of the pie. With me here, she won't even get to lay a finger on it. Naomi snorted coldly, her face full of bitterness. I was able to drive her away 5 years ago, so even if she comes back, I can still drive her out again. Erica was also very confident about it. At this moment, Erica, who was at a spa club, immediately contacted Haley after hanging up her mother's call. Back then, they teamed up to make Anastasia lose her virginity and then had her driven out of the house. Now she and Haley had become best friends, but in the past 2 weeks, Haley had lost contact with her, and Haley's store was also closed. Hence, Erica didn't know what Haley was doing. Soon Haley's voice came over the phone. Hello, Erica. Haley, what have you been doing recently? Why is your store closed? Oh, I'm traveling. Is anything the matter? Haley, let me tell you some bad news. Anastasia has returned to the country. In a luxurious villa, Haley, who was enjoying the service of a servant on the sofa, was so frightened that she dropped her phone. She quickly picked it up, took a deep breath, then asked nervously, "When did she come back? Why did she come back? Why are you so nervous? You're still afraid of her?" "No, I'm just asking. My dad told me. I don't know what she's doing, but I'm quite sure she's coming back to fight over the family assets with me now, and she might cause you trouble too." A flash of viciousness glimmered in Haley's eyes when she heard that. Why didn't Anastasia die abroad? That way, I won't have to panic. Everything Haley enjoyed now was all thanks to her. She would never let Elliot know the truth as long as she was alive. I can't let him know that it was Anastasia back then. Erica, I'm also afraid that she will retaliate against me. Can you tell me everything you know about her in the future? I'll be better prepared, Haley said to Erica. Erica replied, "Okay, we will deal with her together in the future." After hanging up the phone, Haley bit her lip. She was now used to being treated like a wealthy young lady, and she had only the best of everything. In order to make it up to her, Elliot gave her everything she wanted. Haley became even greedier. She wanted more than material compensation. In fact, she wanted to be Elliot's wife. It must be the happiest thing in the world to become the woman of a man like Elliot. Therefore, she would never allow Anastasia to mess up her plans. Even Erica couldn't know. Otherwise, Erica would be jealous of her and expose her. As such, she must have a good grasp of everything about Anastasia, and it was best to find a method to make her disappear from this world. At 5 p.m., Anastasia showed up at the kindergarten on time to pick up her son. The little boy happily said goodbye to the teacher and ran to her. "Mommy, how was school?" "It was great. The teacher likes me very much, and my classmates like me too," the little boy reported happily. "How about we have noodles in the evening?" "Okay." Anastasia was very lucky to give birth to a child with such an angelic character. Since he was a baby, he had never let her worry about him. He was not picky about food, he had a good personality, and he was a kind and loving boy. After shopping in the supermarket, they went home to cook dinner. The little boy played with Lego while Anastasia cooked dinner for two. At that time, the small apartment was full of warmth and coziness. "Mommy, did work go well today?" the little boy asked with concern. "Yes, it went well." Anastasia curved her lips and smiled. In front of her son, she never complained about life or work. Even if life was hard, her son's smile was sweet and could cure all unhappiness. "Jared, is it okay if I take you to see your grandfather in 2 days?" Anastasia asked her son. "But I also really want to see Grandpa." The little boy blinked his eyes in anticipation. Hearing that, Anastasia felt complicated because she knew that Naomi and her daughter would definitely not welcome Jared. She would also not let Erica know that her son was conceived when she accidentally lost her virginity 5 years ago, and she planned to tell her father she conceived the child with a man she loved. At night, Anastasia slept with her son in her arms. The moonlight from outside the window shone in, and the mother and son fell asleep together. Early next morning, after seeing off her son, Anastasia took a cab to the company. Bourgeois was located in an 8-story building in the city center, which was a little inconspicuous due to the even taller skyscrapers next to it. However, this brand had gained popularity in the country. Now that it had been acquired by QR, its market value was enhanced too. As such, 1 month later, Bourgeois was invited to participate in a local jewelry exhibition. Several series designed by Anastasia were selected to be displayed at the exhibition, which was also an effective method for branding purposes. Soon, Anastasia got out of the cab. Since she bought breakfast a little late, she paid for the cab fare while nibbling on the bread in her hand, after which she walked quickly toward the hall. As Jared went to school at 8:30 a.m., she was a little rushed for work at 9 a.m. At the entrance to the elevator, Anastasia tried her best to finish her breakfast before entering the office, as it was inappropriate to go in while eating. Thus, she filled her mouth with the last big mouthful of bread. While she was chewing with her cheeks bulging, the elevator door opened, and a handsome and mature figure suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. Stiffening for a few seconds, she swallowed the bread with some difficulty and walked in as gracefully as possible. "Morning," Elliot greeted in a low and magnetic voice. "Morning," Anastasia replied, and the next second, she was startled by her own sudden hiccup. While hiccuping, Anastasia felt her face flushed red as she nearly choked on her bread. What was even more alarming was that the elevator had mirrors all around. Now, she had nowhere to hide her embarrassment. She covered her mouth, but her body protested that she ate too fast, and there came another not-so-elegant hiccup. Elliot's deep gaze fell on her face through the mirror as he watched Anastasia's awkward act. Finally, when they arrived at the 6th floor, Anastasia squeezed out of the elevator as soon as the doors opened. She felt so ashamed she wanted to dig a hole and bury herself. Elliot's calm expression on his handsome face appeared to crack, and a smile was brewing in his dark eyes. "This girl is inexplicably interesting." Anastasia returned to the office and quickly took a few sips of water to cure her hiccups, but the humiliating scene could not be undone. She wouldn't be this embarrassed if it were another man, but it just had to be Elliot. "He must be laughing at me." 10:30 a.m. "Anastasia, there is a department meeting now." Anastasia responded, "Got it?" In the meeting room, the department director, Felicia Evans, sat on one side of the conference room. She had 8 designers under her, including Anastasia. "Wait for a while. President Pressgrave will be here soon." Felicia took a sip of water and shrugged nervously. Who would have thought that a departmental meeting would involve the big boss as well? This is so stressful. "Anastasia, did you know President Pressgrave from before?" Alice looked at Anastasia meaningfully. Anastasia immediately denied it. "I didn't." "Then why did President Pressgrave keep staring at you yesterday?" another female designer asked, dissatisfied. "You should ask President Pressgrave this," Anastasia responded gracefully. "Work is work, and the company is not a place for you to fall in love, nor a place to take the back door. You all better remember it well." Felicia stared at her subordinate sternly. Then, Alice glanced at Anastasia. In her eyes, Anastasia was someone who wanted to seduce Elliot in order to gain the upper hand. At this moment, the door of the office opened, and an imposing figure stepped in. Elliot walked in gracefully, then sat down at the head of the table. Anyone who saw this man would think that God was unfair. God gave him wealth that could rival the government's wealth, a handsome face that all beings adored, a perfect figure like the sun god Apollo, a graceful and princely temperament, and the majestic aura of an emperor. This man lived for women to worship and adore him. Even Felicia hurriedly ruffled her hair while exuding her mellow and womanly temperament. Although she was 35 years old, she still had a dream of marrying rich. "Let's start." The low and charming voice sounded cold. Anastasia Tillman sat in her elegantly decorated office, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling window. The skyline was as vast and endless as her thoughts. Her fingers brushed absent-mindedly over her phone, debating whether to make the call she'd been contemplating for days. Her father. Since their brief call, she'd been unsure whether to follow through with the visit. She'd promised to come home, but doubts still lingered in her heart. Would they treat her any differently this time, or would she be met with the same cold indifference she'd endured 5 years ago? Her heart grew heavy at the thought, but before she could dwell on it, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her assistant, Grace Ellis. "Grace, Miss Tillman, there's a situation at the design department. Alice is stirring up trouble again." Anastasia's eyes narrowed with resolve. Her family's betrayal had taught her one thing: she'd never be a victim again. She'd endured 5 years of struggle abroad, raising her son, Jared, alone while building her career from the ground up. No one would take away her peace. With measured steps, she made her way to the design department's central floor. The whispers stopped as soon as she entered. She caught Alice's sharp gaze before Alice's lips curled into a wicked smile. "Anastasia, I heard you're taking the lead on the Queen's Rose collection." Alice's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Are you sure you're up for it? After all, I'm sure you're still adjusting from being abroad." The crowd's eyes shifted toward Anastasia, gauging her response. "Alice," Anastasia's voice was like silk over steel, If you're worried about your own capabilities, you're welcome to step aside. I'll gladly guide you through the process." Alice's face twisted in fury, but before she could respond, the room's atmosphere shifted. "Impressive words, Miss Tillman," came the familiar deep baritone voice of Elliot Pressgrave. The crowd's attention snapped to the door as Elliot entered, his commanding presence turning the room's energy electric. His eyes landed on Anastasia and lingered for a moment longer than necessary. Her breath hitched, but she quickly steadied herself. "I'm here to announce something," Elliot's voice echoed through the room. "The Queen's Rose Collection will have a dedicated showcase in the International Jewelry Exhibition. Anastasia will be the face of bourgeois at this event. Prepare accordingly." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Alice's face darkened with envy. "This isn't fair," Alice snapped. "She's only just returned." Elliot's eyes flickered with icy dominance. "If you believe you're more qualified, prove it. But until then, sit down." Alice's face flushed with rage, but she knew better than to challenge Elliot's authority. As she sulked back to her desk, Anastasia's gaze met Elliot's. His lips curled into the faintest smirk before he turned and walked away, his presence leaving a ripple of awe in his wake. But why was he helping her? The ride to the Tillman residence was silent, apart from the occasional hum of the car engine. Anastasia's hands gripped the steering wheel, her palms slick with nervous sweat. Jared's sweet voice piped up from the backseat. "Mommy, will Grandpa like me?" Her heart softened. "Of course he will, baby. He's going to love you." But deep down, she wondered if that was true. When they arrived at the Tillman residence, Anastasia's eyes locked onto Naomi and Erica, both of them standing by the doorway, arms crossed with matching sneers. "Look what the cat dragged in," Naomi snickered. "And she brought a child, too." "How scandalous," Erica chimed, her gaze flicking disdainfully toward Jared. "Don't you dare speak about my son that way," Anastasia's voice was sharp as a blade. She took Jared's hand protectively, her body a shield. Just then Francis stepped out. His face softened upon seeing her, and his eyes welled with emotion. "Anastasia?" "Dad," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotions she'd suppressed for years. They embraced, and for the first time in years, she felt like she'd returned home. "Who's this little one?" Francis's eyes twinkled as he crouched down to meet Jared's gaze. "This is Jared, Dad. Your grandson," Anastasia said proudly. The world paused. Shock rippled through Naomi and Erica's faces, and for the first time, they were silent. "Grandpa," Jared said cheerfully, running into Francis's arms. Francis's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I'm your grandpa." The next few moments were filled with tense silence as Naomi and Erica retreated into the house, their faces dark with unease. The sense of control they once wielded was beginning to crumble. Anastasia's presence, along with Jared's innocent charm, shifted the atmosphere. As they moved into the living room, Naomi's eyes darted between Jared and Anastasia like a hawk watching its prey. Erica sat on the edge of the couch, her jaw tight as if she were bracing for a confrontation. "Anastasia, you've been gone for 5 years. What makes you think you can waltz back in here and expect everything to be the same?" Naomi's tone was laced with condescension. Anastasia's eyes didn't waver. "I'm not here to argue with you, Naomi. I'm here for Dad." Her gaze softened as she turned to Francis, whose face was lined with regret. "I'm just glad you're home, Anastasia. That's all that matters," Francis said, his voice heavy with emotion. Anastasia's heart swelled. She dreamed of hearing those words for years. Jared yawned and rubbed his eyes. Francis smiled down at him. "Let's get this little guy something to eat." As they moved toward the kitchen, Naomi and Erica watched them go, their expressions grim. Erica's eyes met Naomi's, and in that moment, their shared resentment became an unspoken pact. "We're not done with her yet," Erica muttered. Naomi's lips curled into a smile. Not by a long shot. Anastasia's heart felt lighter after her reunion with her father. But that lightness didn't last long. She knew too well that peace in the Tillman residence was always temporary. The glances exchanged between Naomi and Erica had not gone unnoticed. Their eyes, full of malice and silent plotting, hinted that something was brewing beneath the surface. The next morning, Anastasia woke early. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, and Jared's soft breathing filled the quiet of the guest room. She watched her son's peaceful face, marveling at how much love one small person could bring into her life. He had been her guiding light in the darkest of times. "Time to get up, buddy," she said, gently nudging him awake. Jared's eyes fluttered open. "Mommy, are we still at Grandpa's house?" "Yes, sweetie. We'll stay here for a little while longer," she replied, brushing his hair back. "But we're going to be strong, okay? No matter what happens, we'll face it together." "Okay, Mommy." Jared's sleepy smile lit up her heart. After breakfast, Anastasia made her way into the kitchen to prepare tea for her father. It was quiet, too quiet. Her eyes scanned the house for signs of Naomi and Erica, but they were nowhere to be seen. Her instincts told her to stay on guard. Suddenly, the front door slammed open. "Erica, what are you doing?" Anastasia's voice was sharp as she saw her stepsister storming in, her phone in hand, face flushed with anger. "Don't act so innocent, Anastasia." Erica's eyes blazed with fury. "You think you're so perfect just because Dad's finally looking at you again, but you're nothing more than a gold digger." Anastasia's eyes narrowed. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Oh, please. You've been gone for 5 years, and now you're back with a kid in tow. Everyone knows what you're here for," Erica sneered, folding her arms. "You're trying to get a piece of the family's wealth. Isn't that right?" Anastasia's gaze didn't falter. "I'm not here for money, Erica. I'm here because Dad asked me to come home." "Liar. You've always been a liar." Erica's face twisted in rage. "You're just like your mother, always pretending to be some selfless saint while plotting in secret." Anastasia's patience snapped. "Don't you dare speak about my mother like that," she barked, her voice echoing through the house. "She was 10 times the woman you'll ever be." Their heated exchange drew the attention of Francis, who emerged from his study. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice stern and authoritative. "Dad, tell her to leave," Erica shouted, pointing at Anastasia like a wild accuser. "She's only here to rob us of everything." Francis's brows furrowed, his gaze shifting between his 2 daughters. "Anastasia's here as my guest," he said firmly. "If anyone's causing trouble, it's you, Erica. I'm tired of your tantrums." Erica's eyes widened with disbelief. "You're taking her side? Dad, how can you let her fool you like this? She's just like her mother, manipulative and selfish." "That's enough." Francis's voice boomed, silencing everyone in the room. "I've made my decision, and that's final." Erica's face crumpled in defeat, but her eyes glowed with simmering resentment. "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming out of the house. Anastasia's chest heaved with relief. She glanced at her father, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man she remembered from her childhood. He nodded at her, a silent reassurance that she had his support. Later that evening, Anastasia sat by the fireplace, sipping tea while Jared played with his toy cars on the carpet. Her mind wandered to the past, the betrayal by Haley, the cruelty of Erica, and the ache of being disowned by her father. But things were different now. Her phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. Curious, she answered it. "Hello, Miss Tillman," came a familiar, calm voice. "It's Elliot." Her heartbeat quickened. "Elliot? Why are you calling me?" "I'm outside your house," he said. "We need to talk." Her heart leapt into her throat. She rushed to the window and saw his black Rolls-Royce parked just beyond the gate. Without thinking, she threw on a cardigan and stepped outside. Elliot's gaze followed her every step as she approached. "What's so urgent that you had to come all the way here?" she asked, arms folded against the evening chill. He stepped closer, his presence commanding as always. "I've learned something important, and I thought you'd want to know." "What is it?" she asked, tilting her head in suspicion. His eyes met hers, and she saw something raw and unguarded. "Jared, he's my son, isn't he?" The world seemed to stop. Anastasia's breath caught in her throat. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her heart thudded painfully against her chest. "I had the DNA tested," Elliot continued, his voice low but firm. "I'm not here to accuse you. I'm here to take responsibility." Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. You don't need to take responsibility, Elliot. I've been raising him alone just fine. I'm not trying to take him from you, Anastasia, he said, his gaze soft but unwavering. I just want to be part of his life. I missed the first 4 years, and I'm not going to miss another day. Her resolve faltered. She'd built her life to be strong, independent, unshakable. But now, here he was, offering something she'd never expected, support. You'll have to earn it, Elliot, she said, her voice strong but her eyes full of unspoken emotion. Jared's trust isn't something you'll get just by showing up. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I wouldn't expect anything less. They stood there in silence, the cool night air swirling around them. Two people with a past that had broken them but might still have the chance to mend. I'll be back tomorrow, Elliot said before walking back to his car. Don't lock me out. Her eyes followed him as he drove away, her heart unsure of what to feel. All she knew was that the past wasn't so far behind her after all. The morning sun spilled golden rays through the sheer curtains of Anastasia's room. Jared's soft snores echoed as she sat on the edge of the bed, her hands pressed together in front of her face. Her mind was filled with the previous night's revelation. Elliot knew. He knew about Jared. Her heart was a whirlwind of emotions. Panic, anger, fear, and something she dared not name. But at the core of it all, she felt vulnerable. For so long, she'd believed she had moved on, had built a life that no one could control. Now, Elliot's reappearance threatened to unravel it all. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was a message from Grace. Grace, morning, Miss Tillman. There's been a development at the office. Alice has filed a complaint against you. She's accusing you of sabotage in the Queen's Rose project. Anastasia's brow furrowed in disbelief. Sabotage? It was a ridiculous claim, but she knew Alice's goal wasn't justice. It was to tarnish her name. That woman never knows when to stop, Anastasia muttered under her breath. She typed a response to Grace. Anastasia, ignore her. I'll address it when I'm in the office. Thanks for the heads up. The drive to Bourgeois felt longer than usual. Every streetlight seemed to conspire against her, turning red just as she approached. Her thoughts were like tangled threads. Jared, Elliot, Alice. It all swirled in her mind, each demanding attention. By the time she arrived, her resolve had hardened. She wasn't going to let Alice's schemes get to her. If Alice wanted a fight, she'd get one. The office buzzed with energy as usual, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Whispers followed Anastasia as she made her way down the hall. Colleagues exchanged glances, some openly staring as she walked past. They know about the complaint. Her steps didn't falter. She'd faced worse. This was nothing. As she entered her office, Grace was already waiting inside, her face full of concern. Anastasia, I'm so sorry. Alice's complaint has everyone talking. She's really stirring the pot this time, Grace said, shutting the door behind her. I'm not surprised, Anastasia replied, placing her bag on her desk. What's the official statement? She's claiming you tampered with the Queen's Rose design files, Grace said, her eyes filled with worry. She's asking for an official investigation. Good, Anastasia's eyes hardened. Let's have an investigation. When they don't find anything, Alice's little ploy will blow up in her face. Grace's eyes widened. Are you sure? She's already rallied a few people on her side. They're calling you a fraud and saying you're trying to steal credit. I've heard worse, Grace, Anastasia said with a sigh. This won't be the first time someone's tried to discredit me, and it won't be the last. Grace nodded, though she still looked uneasy. All right, I'll stand by you, Miss Tillman. Anastasia's smile was small but genuine. Thank you, Grace. I'll need it. That afternoon, the internal investigation team convened. Everyone sat around the long conference table. The air was tense with silent accusations. Alice sat smugly at the end of the table, arms folded as if she'd already won. Elliot Priestgrave's entrance changed everything. His mere presence shifted the atmosphere. Everyone straightened, eyes locked on him as he took his seat at the head of the table. His sharp gaze swept across the room before settling on Anastasia. This investigation will be conducted fairly and without bias, he declared, his tone leaving no room for argument. If there's any evidence of wrongdoing, it will be dealt with accordingly. His eyes shifted to Alice, who suddenly lost her smug smile. But I will not tolerate baseless accusations or office politics. Alice's face twitched, but she remained silent. The review process began. Files were opened, timestamps checked, and access logs reviewed. One by one, the claims Alice made unraveled. Her accusations lacked evidence. Instead, it became clear that Alice herself had been the one attempting to alter files. The tension in the room shifted. The onlookers' gazes moved from Anastasia to Alice, and soon whispers filled the air. She's the one who tampered with the files. Can you believe it? Alice is done for. Alice's face went pale as the final evidence was displayed on the screen. Her fingerprints were all over the tampered files, and every action was logged with her credentials. "This is outrageous," she shrieked. "This was a setup. I was framed." "The system doesn't lie, Miss Alice." Elliot's voice was cool as ice. "I've seen enough. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending further review." "You can't do this." Alice's eyes were wild with desperation. "I've worked here for years. And you've used that time to undermine your colleagues?" Elliot's gaze was sharp. "Take some time to reflect, Alice. Consider it a mercy that I'm only suspending you." Guards escorted her out, and her protests echoed down the hall. As the meeting concluded, Elliot's eyes found Anastasia's once again. His gaze softened just a little, a silent acknowledgement of her victory. That evening, Anastasia sat on the living room couch, staring at the glow of the television. Jared snuggled up beside her, his tiny hand wrapped around hers. It felt peaceful for once. No Alice. No accusations. No battles to fight. Her phone vibrated. "Elliot, congratulations on handling today with grace. You're stronger than most people I know." Her lips curled into a small smile. She'd been doing everything on her own for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone in her corner. She typed her response slowly. "Anastasia, thanks. But I'm used to fighting my own battles." His reply came quickly. "Elliot, you don't have to anymore. I'm here." Her eyes stayed on the message for a long time. A part of her wanted to trust him, but trust wasn't easy to give. Not after everything she'd been through. "Mommy, are you okay?" Jared's sleepy voice broke through her thoughts. She kissed the top of his head. "I'm okay, baby. Mommy's okay." But she wasn't sure if that was the truth. Not yet. Not entirely. The air inside the Tillman residence was thick with tension. Naomi's eyes darted toward Erica, her fingers twitching as she clutched a silk handkerchief. Erica's nerves were on edge, and her gaze flickered constantly toward the front door, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "Mom, what's taking him so long?" Erica's voice was hushed but sharp. "Be patient," Naomi whispered back, glancing toward the staircase to make sure Francis wasn't within earshot. "You're acting suspicious. Just stay calm. He'll be here soon." As if summoned by fate, the distinct rumble of an approaching car echoed from outside. Naomi's heart skipped a beat, and her eyes snapped toward the window. The unmistakable sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled into the driveway, its glossy surface reflecting the morning sun. "He's here," Naomi breathed, her eyes narrowing with resolve. "Get ready." Erica's eyes glowed with a mixture of excitement and fear. She'd convinced herself that she'd be able to outmaneuver Elliot Pressgrave. But deep down, doubt clawed at her. Moments later, the sound of a knock echoed through the house. Francis's footsteps thudded softly from upstairs as he made his way down. Naomi's face twisted in panic, and she rushed to the door, smoothing out her blouse with trembling hands. She opened the door with a fake smile. "Elliot, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you today." Elliot's eyes were colder than she'd ever seen them. He stepped inside with Ray Osborne trailing behind him. Both men's faces were set in stone, their gazes sharp and unyielding. Naomi's smile faltered. "Mrs. Tillman," Elliot's voice was smooth but laced with steel. "I'm here for one reason only." Her throat tightened. "Of course. Please come in." "Don't bother." He cut her off, his eyes sweeping across the room as if searching for something or someone. "Where's Erica?" Elliot's voice was a thunderclap in the still room. Naomi's eyes darted to the kitchen, But it was too late. Erica stepped out, her face a mask of false innocence. "I'm right here, Mr. Pressgrave. Is something the matter?" Elliot's gaze bore into her, and for a moment, Erica's facade cracked. Her fingers twitched at her sides. "We're all adults here, so let's skip the pretense," Elliot said, his tone deadly calm. "I'm here to deliver consequences." Ray stepped forward, his hands full of a stack of folders. He placed them on the coffee table with a heavy thud, opening the topmost one with precision. The pages displayed images, timestamps, and records, a web of evidence meticulously collected. "Let's start with you, Erica." Elliot's eyes stayed on her, his voice cold and sharp as glass. 5 years ago, you and Haley Seymour conspired to drug Anastasia and lead her to room 808. I've confirmed it with the club's security logs and staff statements. Erica's eyes widened in shock, her hands clenching into fists. "That's a lie. You have no proof." "This," Ray said, holding up a thumb drive, "is all the proof I need." He inserted it into a small tablet and tapped the screen. Images of Erica meeting with the club's staff played in front of everyone. Her voice echoed through the speakers as she discussed setting the trap. Naomi's face paled. That's not possible," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's very possible, Mrs. Tillman." Elliot's eyes flicked toward her. "And you're no innocent bystander either. You've enabled this behavior for years. Covering for her. Protecting her from the consequences of her actions." Naomi's hands shook as she stumbled back onto the couch. "But it wasn't like that. Don't insult my intelligence." Elliot's voice was a growl now. "You've stolen from Anastasia opportunities, love, and dignity. But today, Francis entered the room at that moment, his eyes filled with confusion and concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, his eyes moving from Elliot to Naomi to Erica. "The truth, Mr. Tillman," Elliot said. "Your wife and daughter have spent years trying to destroy Anastasia. But now, they'll face justice?" Francis's face fell as he looked at Naomi. "Is this true?" His voice cracked, disbelief tainting his words. "Francis, Naomi's voice choked, her lips quivering as she grasped for an excuse. "Answer me." Francis's voice boomed, cutting through her plea like a blade. Her silence was damning. Erica's eyes darted toward the door, but Ray's sharp gaze stopped her in her tracks. "Don't even think about it," he warned. Elliot's gaze returned to Erica. "You'll be facing charges for conspiracy, defamation, and fraud. I've already spoken to the authorities." "You're bluffing." Erica's voice cracked. "You can't do this." "Watch me." Elliot's gaze was unrelenting. "It's over, Erica. Your lies, your games, your plots, they're done." 2 officers entered the house, their presence undeniable. One of them approached Erica, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Erica Tillman, you're under arrest for conspiracy and fraud." No. Erica screamed, thrashing as the officers dragged her away. Naomi's sobs filled the room. She reached out toward Francis, but he backed away, his eyes filled with hurt. "I trusted you," he whispered. "I trusted you both." Tears streamed down Naomi's face as she crumbled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. "Francis, please." But Francis's eyes had gone cold. He turned and walked away without looking back. As the chaos settled, Anastasia appeared at the entrance of the room, her eyes meeting Elliot's. Her gaze softened, the weight of years of pain finally lifting. "It's over now," Elliot said softly, walking toward her. "No one will ever hurt you again." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and for the first time, she believed him. The evening breeze swept softly through the wide-open balcony doors of Anastasia's apartment. The golden glow of dusk bathed the space in warmth. Her heart, however, was far from at peace. She sat on the plush couch, her eyes fixated on the flickering screen of her phone. Elliot's words echoed in her mind. "You don't have to fight alone anymore. I'm here." Her fingers hovered over the screen as she considered sending him a reply. She'd lived 5 years without anyone, no one to lean on, no one to confide in. Letting Elliot in felt like opening a door she'd long ago bolted shut. Knock, knock, knock. Her head whipped toward the front door. Jared, who had been quietly building a Lego fortress on the floor, looked up at her, his innocent eyes full of curiosity. "Mommy, someone's here," he said, hopping to his feet. "Stay here, baby," Anastasia instructed, her heart thudding heavily in her chest. She moved slowly toward the door, each step deliberate. Peeking through the peephole, she saw him. Elliot Pressgrave. He stood there, hands in his coat pockets, his gaze locked firmly on the door. His broad shoulders filled the narrow hallway, and his presence seemed to radiate through the very wood of the door. She told herself she wouldn't let him into her world, but seeing him here now, she knew that resolve was cracking. Her hand rested on the door handle for a moment too long, heart-battling head. Finally, she unlocked it and opened it just a crack. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" she asked, keeping her voice steady but firm. "I'm here to see you," he said, his deep voice soft but unyielding. "To see both of you." His eyes flicked toward Jared, who peeked out from behind his mother's legs. "It's late, Elliot," she said, shifting to block his view of Jared. "What's so urgent that you had to come here now?" He sighed, raking a hand through his thick hair. "I'm tired of waiting, Anastasia. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay watching from the sidelines." His gaze softened. "I'm here because I want to be in Jared's life. In your life. No more distance." Her breath caught in her throat. His words hit her with the weight of years of loneliness she'd carefully hidden. She glanced back at Jared, who was now standing openly, gazing up at Elliot with innocent curiosity. "Mommy, is he the man from the picture?" Jared asked innocently, tilting his head in confusion. Anastasia's eyes widened in shock. "What picture?" she asked, turning toward her son. "The one you have in your drawer." "The man with the watch," Jared replied, his voice light with curiosity, oblivious to the storm he'd just unleashed. Her eyes snapped to Elliot's wrist where the watch gleamed like a beacon. The watch. The same watch she'd kept hidden for years, tucked away in her drawer where she thought no one would find it. Her heart pounded as Elliot's gaze followed hers to the watch on his wrist. "You've had it all this time, haven't you?" he said, his voice filled with realization. "I knew it wasn't Haley who had it. It was you." Anastasia's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not doing this now, Elliot." She gripped Jared's shoulders, pulling him gently toward the living room. "Go finish your Lego set, baby." "But, Mommy." "Now, Jared," she said, her tone firmer this time. Jared's face scrunched in a pout, but he obeyed, walking back to his fortress of Legos. Once he was far enough away, she turned back to Elliot, her eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Why are you really here, Elliot?" she hissed. "To dig up the past? To make me relive everything I've buried? I'm here to make things right, Anastasia," he said, his voice low and full of sincerity. "I'm here because you deserve justice. You deserve to know that you were never alone." Her walls cracked a little more. Her lips trembled, and she crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "I've been alone for 5 years, Elliot. You don't get to swoop in now and act like you're my savior. I'm not here to save you," he said firmly, stepping closer. His eyes bore into hers with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. Because I'm his father, and I'm not going to let him grow up without knowing me." Her throat tightened. She'd fought so hard to keep control of her life, to stay strong for Jared, but now everything she'd fought for was unraveling. "Please, Anastasia," he said softly. "I'm not asking for much. Just a chance." Her heart warred with her mind. Her eyes darted toward Jared, who was happily playing with his Legos, oblivious to the weight of the moment. She'd raised him on her own, protected him from everything and everyone. But Elliot wasn't going to leave. "You'll have to prove it," she said at last, her voice quiet but firm. "If you're serious, you'll have to prove it to me and to him. You're not walking in here and taking over our lives. You'll have to earn it." Elliot's lips lifted into a small smile, not smug, but filled with relief. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to her. "This is for you." "What is it?" she asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "Proof," he said with a nod. "Open it later." Without another word, he turned and walked away. Her eyes lingered on his retreating form, her mind full of questions she didn't have the strength to ask. Once he'd gone, she locked the door, her heart still pounding in her chest. She opened the envelope with careful fingers. Inside was a set of documents with detailed reports, each page more damning than the last. Records of Naomi's bribes to club staff, Erica's signed statements to the club manager, and a witness account from the night she was sent to room 808. Tears filled her eyes. He'd been investigating them. He'd been gathering evidence to clear her name. Her fingers shook as she clutched the papers. Her mind replayed Elliot's words. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time in 5 years, Anastasia believed it might be true. The next morning, Anastasia woke up with an unfamiliar sense of calm. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden beams across her room. The weight that had pressed down on her heart for years felt lighter somehow, like a fog lifting after a storm. Jared's small body was snuggled next to her, his hand clutching the hem of her nightshirt. His peaceful face reminded her of all she'd fought for. Her son, her pride, her purpose. Her eyes shifted to the envelope that lay on the nightstand, its contents still fresh in her mind. The evidence Elliot had left for her. Names, dates, witnesses. Proof that Naomi and Erica had conspired to ruin her life. Her phone buzzed beside it, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Elliot. "Elliot, I'll be outside at 9 a.m. if you're ready to talk. No pressure. Just want to be here." She stared at the message for a moment, heart thudding in her chest. His words weren't demands or ultimatums. Just an offer. An invitation. By 8:45 a.m., Anastasia had dressed and gotten Jared ready. He sat at the breakfast table, happily munching on toast with peanut butter while she sipped her tea. Her mind was clear for the first time in a long while. Knock, knock. Her eyes darted to the door. Her heart leapt, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. "Jared, stay right here, okay?" "Okay, Mommy," Jared replied with a mouthful of toast, too preoccupied with his cartoons to care. Anastasia wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and walked to the door. When she opened it, Elliot was standing there, dressed in a casual gray sweater and dark jeans. He looked more approachable than she'd ever seen him before. No suit, no tie, just a man. "Good morning," he said, his eyes soft as they met hers. "Morning," she replied, glancing behind him. No Ray, no entourage. He'd come alone. "Can I come in?" he asked, his tone gentle. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, with a small nod, she stepped aside to let him in. Jared's eyes lit up when he saw Elliot. "You're back," Jared exclaimed, his smile wide. Elliot's face softened in a way that Anastasia hadn't expected. He crouched to Jared's level, his gaze warm and filled with something she couldn't quite name. "I'm back, buddy," Elliot said, his smile genuine. "Did you finish your Lego castle?" Jared's eyes lit up. "Almost. It's huge now." He waved his arms wide for emphasis. "I'd love to see it later," Elliot said with a grin before turning his attention to Anastasia. "Can we talk privately?" She nodded, leading him toward the living room while Jared stayed focused on his breakfast. Once they were seated, she folded her hands on her lap, her eyes steady on him. "You've done a lot of digging," she began, her voice even but firm. "I had to," he replied honestly. "I didn't realize how much I'd missed, how much I'd overlooked. And I'm sorry for that, Anastasia." Her eyes narrowed. "Is this about guilt?" "No," he replied quickly. "It's about doing the right thing. I'm not here to force myself into your life. I'm here because I should have been here from the beginning. You deserved better, and so did Jared." Her heart squeezed at his words, but she'd learned to be cautious with hope. "So, what now? You want to play Father of the Year?" "I'm not perfect," he said, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to show you that I'm serious." Her throat tightened. No promises. No grand declarations. Just effort. "And if I say no?" she asked, testing him. His eyes didn't waver. "Then I'll still be here. Not to force you, but to support you. Whatever you need, I'll provide it." Silence hung between them for a moment too long. Her eyes searched his face for any sign of deceit. She found none. "Fine," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "We'll see how serious you are, Elliot." He exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. "That's all I ask." A week later, The Tillman residence was filled with movement and noise. Officers roamed the halls, cataloging items and collecting evidence. Erica's screams echoed from the front porch as she was escorted into a police vehicle. "This is illegal. You'll regret this. I'll sue all of you," she shrieked, thrashing as the officers secured her in the back seat. Naomi sat on the porch steps, her face pale and hollow. She'd fought for years to maintain her control over the family's wealth, but it had crumbled overnight. Francis stood by the door, his face lined with exhaustion. He'd been quiet since the revelations were laid bare. His gaze remained on Naomi, distant and disappointed. "Was it worth it, Naomi?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Was it worth destroying our family?" Tears streamed down her face. She didn't answer. Back at Anastasia's apartment, Jared was fast asleep on the couch. Anastasia sat beside him, stroking his hair while staring at the television screen that played muted cartoons. Elliot sat on the armrest, quiet but present. Neither of them spoke for a while. "They're all gone now," she finally said, her voice soft. "Erica, Naomi, it's over." Elliot nodded. "You're free of them now. You and Jared." "Freedom feels strange," she admitted, her eyes never leaving Jared's face. "I've been fighting for so long that I'm not sure what's next." Elliot's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady and strong. "You're not alone anymore, Anastasia." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't move. The silence between them wasn't heavy. For once, it felt like peace. Her gaze shifted toward Elliot. He'd come back. Not with words, but with action. And after everything, she'd learned that actions always spoke louder than words. "Stay," she said softly. His eyes met hers, and his face lit with surprise, then warmth. "I'm not going anywhere."